Welcome back to part 2 of our insightful and inspiring trip to Cornwall to visit the amazing Verdant Brewing Company. Verdant have been generous enough to give the homebrewing community the recipe for Sundialer, one of their stunning core pale ales featuring some of the most interesting hops from both the USA and, most importantly, New Zealand. In part 1, we sat down and heard from James Heffron, co-founder and head brewer, where he gave us a detailed insight into the origins of the brewery, as well as some key information about brewing Sundialer. In this second instalment, we're getting behind the scenes and having a full tour of this stunning brewery with Sam Taylor, operations manager here at Verdant.
Nice to be in orbit.
Sam Taylor, Operations Manager at Verdant Brewery. What a role.
Yes, yeah, that's me. I've been here for 4 years now.
Yeah.
Started down in the cellar and just packing boxes in 2020. So lots of cans
Yeah.
in that year. And then, yeah, after that, I ended up on the brew deck for 3 or 4 years. And since October, I've been the Operations Manager. So,
Awesome.
yeah, it's been a bit strange to step back from the hands-on brewing and cellaring side of things,
Yeah.
but I still get to do it from time to time. It's really nice, and
Your background as a home brewer?
Yeah. So before working in the brewing industry, I had a very different job.
Yeah.
But I've always been into beer. Grew up like 3 or 4 minutes down the road from 2 different breweries back in Norfolk, surrounded by barley malt fields. So
Yeah, beautiful.
I don't know. I feel like it was something that was always around me. And so did my first couple of home brews when I was at university for some cheap booze.
Yeah.
But then as people do. But then once you get invested in craft beer, you want to know how to make it yourself, and do it as well as you can, and it's so fun making it. Like, I didn't mind when things went wrong because it's just a hobby.
Yeah, learning it.
But now it's also my job.
Awesome. So the brewery here at Verdant, you're going to give us a look round.
Yeah.
Let's take a look.
So Sam, we're here at the start of the journey of the brew. And by the mill, you've got 2 silos outside. What's in those?
So we have 2 silos outside that can hold 27 tons each, and they're our base malt. So it's both from Simpson's, Extra Pale and Golden Promise. We use probably twice as much Extra Pale as we do Golden Promise, and they feed directly into this mill. We've got a 4-roll mill and a grist case over here, which is on load cells, and so we'll mill our base malt that we're needing for the recipe, and then anything that needs milling, we're like Vienna malt, Caragold, and that sort of thing. Dextrin we'll chuck through the hopper, and that feeds into the mill as well. And then for the unmalted adjuncts, things like porridge oats, flaked wheat that we don't want to mill, we have a bypass hopper, so we can just chuck them straight into the screw that will feed it into the grist case.
You said there's weight cells in the main hopper there, so you just dial in the amount that you want and it chucks it in.
Yeah. So we just program the computer to cut out basically once it hits so it's actually full of the grist for a light bulb at the moment. So that's 700 kilos. So once it hits 700 kilos, it stops calling for the malt from the silo, and then we come and turn the mill off.
Awesome.
So it's a lot of Simpson's malt, but we can also see you've got crisp, you've got best malts.
Yeah, so we use crisp for a lot of our sacked editions. So Vienna, which makes up a good portion of the light bulb grist. Also Caragold, Dextrin, those kind of things. Crystal 150 we'll use from crisp, and then Simpson's we'll tend to use for the darker malts when we brew things like Burnt House, which is our porter. Or any other dark beers, basically. And then, when we brew our lager, we have Heidelberg Pilsner malt.
It's an awesome malt.
Yeah,
yeah,
really good.
Fantastic in a lager.
So pale,
yeah,
so delicious.
Nice. So Sam, from here, where are we going next?
So once it's all milled and in the grist case, It will then be called for when the brewer starts mashing in, and delivered by an auger into a hydrator and then into the mash conversion vessel at the speed. It just runs at one speed, and the brewer will dial in their water and hit their temperature, hopefully.
Awesome. Awesome. Let's go there next.
So we're up on the brew deck.
Yep.
There's the end of the auger where the grist is coming in. Talk us through the steps, please, Sam.
Yeah, so it'll hit the hydrator and mix with the water. It's a steam jacketed mash conversion vessel, big paddles at the bottom so we can do good step mashes. And yeah, it'll take as much as 1.8 tons when we do very occasionally a triple IPA. But a normal double IPA grist, which we brewed yesterday, is 1.7 tons, and yeah, it just about fits.
So I'm looking at Sundialer. Do you do a step mash on Sundialer?
No, we don't. So Sundialer has a rest at, I think it's 68 degrees.
Yeah.
And then we have a mash out on all of our brews. We mash out at 76 degrees.
Helps with the grain bed fluid and.
Yeah. With the exception of the lager, actually, where we do a kind of sort of slightly cheaty mash out decoction.
Okay.
So we'll transfer 2/3 of the grist over into the lauter tun, and then the remaining third will boil, and then add that in, and then that hits our 76 degrees in there.
So Sam, mash conversion vessel, and then over to the lauter tun.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we actually have 2 lauter tuns, but we mainly use the big one because it's a bit better. And it can pretty much cope with all the grist that we want, from light bulb to dippers and everything in between. And yeah, then work, runoff and collection will be about 2 hours into the kettle.
And again, steam powered. Everything runs off the steam generator that you've got.
That's
here.
correct. Yeah, yeah. So we'll collect a pre-boil volume of 45 hectolitres, and we've got an external work boiler, which powered by steam. So everything is powered by our steam boiler.
Just so gentle on the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get a really nice, efficient rolling boil. So the work gets pumped out through the bottom of the kettle into the external work boiler, boils in there, and then is pumped back into the kettle, hits the spreader plate, so you get a really good motion through the boil.
Your time for when you're emptying the boil kettle into the Whirlpool vessel, about how long does it take to empty? Because one of the things that's important for us is that transfer time.
Yeah.
Both from the kettle and then from the Whirlpool vessel. So about how long does it take to transfer from the kettle?
So if we are doing, say we're doing a flame out, it's very quick, end of boil, I would say probably within 10 minutes it will be in the Whirlpool.
Oh wow, okay.
If we're doing an 80 degree Whirlpool, which obviously a lot of what we do is 80 degree Whirlpools,
yeah.
We have a shell and tube heat exchange, so we'll recirculate through the heat exchanger back into the kettle.
Yeah.
We'll knock off it's like 10 degrees, and then we'll knock off the rest of the temperature on the way over to the Whirlpool, and that'll be more like for like 15 to 20 minutes between the end of the boil and it getting in there at 80 degrees.
And you've got an ice water tank that you're using for your heat exchanger.
So yeah, the ice water doesn't actually feed this one. It only feeds our big plate heat exchanger for knockout of work, which is why we had to have the recirculation port installed to this, so that we could get enough of the temperature out on the way over and get a really quick Whirlpool and get a nice big dense cone in the centre of the Whirlpool.
Yeah, and then so the water that the liquor that you're using in the heat exchanger then goes straight into the hot liquor tank, I guess.
Yes, yeah, it goes back to the hot liquor tank nice and hot, so kind of does two things. Yeah. It's good to be able to recapture any of these things, and that heat is a resource that we want.
Yeah.
So you're Whirlpooling 80, then how long is that taking to Whirlpool, and then how long does that take to then cool and transfer to tank?
So in the case of Sundialer, for instance, it will be about 10 minutes from the transfer from kettle into the Whirlpool, where we'll have already put the hops, and then there's a half an hour stand at 80 degrees in the Whirlpool. So it goes in really fast, so we get a really good Whirlpool motion that just kind of like gradually slows as the stand goes on. We don't have to keep like re-pumping it or anything. And then It'll have its half an hour stand, and then knockout to the fermenter will take about 40 minutes. So some of the work is in contact with those hops for quite a while.
Yeah.
You know, the first bit that gets in there and the last bit that gets out, you know. But yeah, it'll be, we'll collect around about 40 hectolitres into FV from each batch. And yeah, it's a heck a minute, so it's about 40 minutes to empty the Whirlpool generally.
Yeah, because like as a home brewer, you can do that in like about 10 minutes. So we really need to think about a little bit differently about the contact time with the hops for replicating the recipe.
Absolutely. You know, I remember home brewing, and it's so quick to just dump out your kettle into the fermenter.
Exactly.
You know, but yeah, you know, it really is. You want to get as much as you can out of it, especially on those lower temperatures. You know, you got to extract every delicious bit of flavour from those hops.
Yeah. So Sam, 12 tanks here.
Yep.
How big are the tanks?
So they will fit 130 hectolitres each. And yeah, generally things like light bulb, Sundialer, people money space time, basically, you know, the core pale ales will brew to that length, and then anything that's like a special pale ale, IPA, and some double IPAs will get brewed to 80. We also got some smaller tanks down there, 240s and 220s, which we use for the small batch stuff, and you know, the occasional one-off just thing that it's empty and we fancy it. So
yeah. So looking at Sundialer, your fermentation temperature for that?
So we'll pitch at 18,
yeah,
and then hold at 19, and then once we hit gravity of around 1030, we'll let it free rise to 21.
And then the dry hopping of that beer, we picked up from James earlier that you want the beer clear of yeast before you start dry hopping.
That's correct. Yeah. So we'll soft crash to I think it's about 13 normally, and drop out the yeast, and then yeah, once it's ready to go, dry hop and then crash it.
We also picked up earlier in the day about you're constantly dumping yeast from the bottom of the vessel.
Yeah.
And that's like a daily. When you've got fermented beer, it's like a daily.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, like especially when you knock out on the day after knockout into the fermenter, the amount of sort of trub and stuff that you want to just get rid of, you know, because it's not doing good things to your flavour.
Sure.
And there's with the best will in the world and a really good Whirlpool, you're still going to knock some hops out into the FV, which, you know, it's good to get those kind of gone. So yeah, and we'll trub dump often.
Sam, obviously the temperature of the dry hop is really important. What temperature are you dry hopping at?
So we'll dry hop at 13
Yeah.
degrees, and then it will get crashed pretty much immediately after that to 0.5 degrees.
Okay, and how long do you hold it at that temperature before you're then putting it to bright for carbonation?
It's a 48-hour contact time generally, and almost all beers get that. You know, sometimes production schedules push you a bit, but yeah, you get 48 hours. It'll get roused a couple of times during that process. And I mean, from 13, our cooling system's really good, but from 13 to 0.5 takes a bit of time to get there anyway, especially if you've got 130 hectolitres of a light bulb or Sundialer or something.
Yeah, sure.
Your house yeast, you know, it's really famous, it's really popular.
Yeah.
Comes in a dry form, it's available to homebrewers and breweries all around the world. Are there any characteristics of that yeast that we should be aware of? Like, I think James touched on it being slightly lazy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, definitely it can potentially under attenuate a little bit. I think as brewers, we are very well attuned with our base malt in terms of like how it performs. Simpson's really good in terms of being very honest about their certificate of analysis on the malts to sort of tell us where in the spec that malt lies. Yeah. And it requires tweaks here and there. Sometimes you have to change a mash temp a little bit. But yeah, the yeast can be a little bit lazy. Yeah. But I think it's just a case of when you're brewing with it, you learn to know what to expect, what it's going to do with a beer.
So in terms of Sundialer, from time of brewing to packaging, what's that total length of time that we're looking at?
It's about 3 weeks. So yeah, it'll ferment out in kind of like a sort of a week pretty comfortable. I mean, to be honest, the pale ales actually ferment out in a few days.
Yeah.
But you know, they'll get some time to sort of clear up and condition, and then we'll be harvesting yeast off of things like that on sort of day 6 is primarily a really good time to collect the yeast from those to pitch into whatever. So it kind of fits nicely with our brew schedule to, you know, have pale ales like Sundialer brewed weekly so that we can crop from, you know, from vessel to vessel.
And that cropping process, so you're dropping the yeast from the cone of one fermenter and pumping it directly into another one?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we'll so we've got a cellometer which helps us count cells, basically a fancy microscope.
Yeah.
And does a bit of the work for you. So we'll take a sample, we'll you know, check the viability and density of the yeast, and then whatever the pitching rate is, we'll work out the calculation of how much yeast we're going to need to pitch from cone to cone, and then it just goes through a flow meter.
How many generations will you run that yeast for?
Well, more than they probably say you should, I think. I mean, many, quite a few. Certainly with the other yeast strain we use, Bry 97, we've taken that to many generations, yeah.
And you have that habit of like you'll take it from a pale to then grow it up almost to IPA to then dipper level.
Yeah, that's it. And like we can crop off the IPAs. We'll generally never crop off a dipper because the yeast is too too stressed out from its life.
Yeah. So we've come down from where the fermenters are. We're down by the bright tanks and packaging line. Can you just talk us through this a little bit, please, Sam?
Yeah, so the beer will be transferred through centrifuge almost all the time into one of the 2 bright tanks that we have. It normally spends max a day in a bright tank. Before packaging, it's just waiting basically. And yeah, so this is our canning line, and also in the centre is where we fill the kegs. We have an inline carbonator, a BC30, so the beer will be, you know, whatever residual CO2 is in it, fed into the BC30, and the guys will carb it up, and we'll test it as we go through the run, check for the CO2 and the DO levels. And yeah, so we've got a 9-head rotary filling line, can do about 65 cans a minute. So yeah, it'll be about 4 or 5 people here, a couple of people packing boxes, someone basically controlling the canning line and testing carbs and all that sort of thing, and then someone helping the depalletizer do its job as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, so on a normal run of, say, Sundial, we'll pack 150, 200 cases, and then the rest will go into kegs.
Into keg. When you're pushing from the bright tank to the can line or to the carbonator, you're using CO2 to do that, or some sort of pump?
So it'll get pumped by the integrated pump that the BC30 has.
Right.
And yeah, that's how that tends to work. You know, just a bit of top pressure on top.
Yeah.
So we got some nitrogen generation not too long ago. So over in that corner over there, we've got a deaerated liquor tank, which we use as like processed water for making sure we can control oxygen. So before the centrifuge is up and running and has beer going through it, it'll get flushed with deaerated liquor. Same with the canning line. And the nitrogen generation plant has cut our CO2 usage hugely.
Yeah, and that's been absolutely massively important.
Yeah, for sure. You know, it really highlighted how much CO2 we were using just to make that processed water. Because we all know that oxygen is the enemy of beer, but you know, it'd be great if we could make that processed water that we need without using tons of CO2.
Actually, I just want to really pick up on this point because it's massively important for homebrewers as well. So you are using deaerated water when in anything that's contacting the beer.
Yeah. It's a tricky one for homebrewers, obviously, because oxygen ingress in a commercial setting is much easier to control than in a homebrew setting. You know, I mean, I shudder to think how when I first started like bottling my homebrew in my kitchen, how much dissolved oxygen I would probably be ending up with in the bottle. So yeah, I don't think it's something that many homebrewers maybe have the luxury of being able to create for themselves, but you know, it's a very useful thing in a commercial setting to be able to flush lines and just generally make sure that oxygen and beer don't meet until you're drinking.
Ideal. It's actually really interesting for us because it's not something that we've picked up from breweries before, talking about de-aerated water in any contact points. Actually, that's really interesting.
So Sam, the cans come off the canning line, go into your cold store, then what happens?
Yeah, so we're stood right next to where all the web shop orders are packed. So anything for the web shop gets packed into trays, goes straight in the cold store, and then gets wheeled out whenever people want to order something. So I guess those that are familiar with us know that we generally release on the web shop on a Wednesday. So we would want things to be as fresh as possible. So generally the beer we're releasing on a Wednesday has been packed on the Monday, Tuesday, and sometimes the Wednesday. So you're getting incredibly fresh beer pretty much straight away. And then anything else that doesn't get sold in the web shop, which obviously is a good chunk. Can't buy a keg off the web shop.
Yeah.
We have a warehouse just over the road. So 2 or 3 times a week we'll have an Arctic come and just schlep the stuff over there for us, where we then send out all of our trade orders, which is quite a big chunk of work. We have a few guys over there, and so it's a pretty compact situation, but seems to work.
Yeah. Sam, the information that all of the team here at Verdant have given us has been absolute gold for our customers. Thank you very much for the tour and the hospitality down here at Verdant. It's been awesome.
No problem at all. I mean, I think a good chunk of people who work here, and obviously James himself, all come from a homebrewing background.
Yeah.
That's where the passion and the love comes from it. And it's good to be able to give that back to the homebrew community, and hopefully people can do a good job of recreating some of our recipes at home.
Yeah, the information on the recipes, and especially Sundialer, has been absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to get back and brew our versions.
I'm totally inspired. I really want to have a go at doing my own version in a Verdant style.
Yeah, in a Verdant style, yeah. Can't wait, it's gonna be awesome. Thank you.
No problem at all.